Hello, I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. Today, we're going to be discussing, based upon the recent incident that I've been giving small details about, and I've given a storytelling in the previous video. The unraveling of the blindfold, believe me, was not easy. So, today we're going to be discussing based upon domestic violence culture and what I've learned about it based upon the responses I received. Now, I myself have already been sexually assaulted more than twice. I've been raped twice and sexually assaulted other times. And I had stated how I myself was afraid more about how my abusers would treat me afterwards because they had abused it to abuse me instead of helping me. So this time was different. I had actually wanted to see how things would turn out if I did it the way that I learned about, and see if these things are actually true as to how people respond and treat the victim. And believe me, it was very hard because a lot of it is very true. There's not only flaws in the mental health field, but let's just say there's a lot of self-centered pricks out there and assholes, because the way that people respond is really self-centered or even unthoughtful, inconsiderate, and can actually cause more damage to the victim. I'd say that the hardest part out of all of this was based upon how people responded. Outsiders, not the person who did the act themselves, but the outsiders. Just like with the incidents with my abusers and how they responded to it happening is what was the hard part, not the abuse incident itself. So let's start with these responses. Oh boy. These are, I would say really good, but it's more shocking to me, a lot of them, because let's just say that, like I had stated, is that many people ask me, why did they do that to you? That, asking a victim, why people abuse, that's not something that they can just, they don't even want to have to answer that, because most of the time they themselves, they would never consider doing it themselves. It's almost implying that, they could do that themselves. Like, I myself have never treated a victim the way that I've been treated during this. It's just unimaginable to me how people have responded. I'm sure I've said things that weren't right, but I'm big enough to at least admit it. There's a difference between doing wrong and being able to admit it. I know people who aren't good at that at all, but none of us are perfect. But like I learned in the mental health field, dealing with a victim is, they talk about rape victims, but it should be any type of victim. Dealing with a victim and how treatment goes in my sexual assault class is there's many rules as to how you come across to them, and what you say can affect them negatively. So you have to be careful with how you respond to a victim in order to actually be helpful. And yes, even people in the mental health field are flawed with that. Even the ones that work at those crisis centers that are supposed to be trained for this are flawed. So I myself want to make changes, and I'm using my current or recent experience to do so, and my other past experiences, to hopefully make a change that I myself have found necessary for many, many years now. Okay. Oh my God. Go in there and tell him that you can't be physical with him anymore, but you value your friendship with him. Don't do anything to lead him on, such as don't hug, kiss, or cuddle. That goes back to sloppy, hypocritical ageism. It's not just about being immature. Most adults, their head is in the gutter, believe me. And like I had proven, or I personally don't believe is true, is that, like the saying that men think with their dicks. No, absolutely not. And I used Ken and John Paul, as for me, I know that I could say now for the people I've known recently, that is not true. Like I know Ken better. I've known him longer, and I can actually say that he's a genius. He thinks with his brain. He has a brain. He's intelligent. He doesn't think with his dick. I mean, but there's men that think that too. But then, goes around by females too, but men too. So it makes all men look bad, and that's in a social flaw in cultural one. Thinking that men need it. They're gonna die. Remember, if they don't have sex. Oh my goodness. So a person cannot control their physical reactions after having sex? That's my response. A person can't kiss someone without the need to have sexual intercourse? That's my response to that. Stay away from him. Did you call the police? Be careful and don't let him in your place again. Don't be alone with him. You should get a gun and carry it around with you everywhere. Even inside my home, I need a gun. I should carry it with me. Oh my goodness. Why didn't you report it right away? You need to report it. Well, duh. Obviously, he isn't trustworthy anymore. Also, telling a victim to be careful is blaming them for it happening in the first place. A victim isn't stupid and realizes when a person is a danger to their safety. A victim shouldn't be instilled with more fear than they already have from that experience. Ask the victim if they feel like their safety is at risk. Exactly. Ask them if they feel like it. Don't assume or put more fear in them. They're already dealing with the consequences, such as in my situation, the consequences, as I've discussed as for condition normalized victimization syndrome, the consequences of this is that we don't want to have to deal with the loss of something that benefited our life in positive ways in that person. So if it's somebody that you had certain expectations or trusted them or had certain feelings for, it's going to be hard, no matter what type of relationship it is. I went through that with my father and with Ken, and now with the intimate partnership. So I'm already dealing with those consequences. And that was that's where people mistake in denial. I didn't want to have to deal with the feelings of that. And that's where we're going to get into grievance. That's something I learned in the mental health field too. And that was in the class with the professor, Joe Ryder, that I had, that explained grievance. Most people think of grievance, they think of going to a funeral and the loss based on death. But you know what? Grievance happens in relationships too, of any kind. And it's not an easy thing to go through, especially after somebody had done harm to you that you had trusted. Don't make it as though the victim is weak and unable to defend themselves, because during the event, they naturally go into the fight, flight, or freeze mode. Everybody does. It's natural to you don't know what's going to happen. Like I stated, I've been raped more than twice, sexually assaulted more than twice, and every single time is going to be different. You do not know. That's just your body's natural response. It doesn't mean that that person is weak. Heck, somebody that's even weaker than me and smaller, it could happen that way too, as to where, I freeze and they get away with more than, most people be like, they probably think in that case, oh my goodness, how'd that happen? Why'd you let them? You're stronger than them. But in this case, it's not any different than, saying, well, you need to be afraid. They're bigger than you. Just because they're bigger than me doesn't mean that I can't fight them off. But then again, even if I can fight them off, that doesn't mean that's going to happen based upon the natural reaction I have to when it is happening. Many people say, I would have, you should have. Those are the things that should be taken out when speaking to any victim of abuse. Saying, I would have done this if I was in that situation. You should have done this. You do not know what you're going to do. That's also insulting and degrading the victim as though they are dumb and never thought of that themselves. Believe me, I've thought about this before it's happened to me ever when I was younger. I could kick their butt, I'm strong, and this is what I would do. This is what I would do if I was in a marriage and my husband was, verbally abusing me or physically. It's easier to say it than to actually do it. And many people will sit there and judge, criticize, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'll tell you right now, that's one of the biggest problems in society, and as to why most victims do have trouble getting over what they are going through in order to build their confidence and move on and better their lives in positive ways. A victim shouldn't be punished and have to believe that they now have to live in fear due to the unacceptable actions of another person. That's right. I'm still going to do what I want to do, and that's part of my healing. I'm going to keep on doing things I enjoy doing, anything that involves positively affecting my life to where I go up and not continue going down. I'm not going to stop doing those things that I enjoy just because somebody's, that hurt me is near me. No, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm not going to, sit and hide. And that shouldn't be instilled in somebody to, have more fear. If somebody has fear and that's what they feel they need to do in order to heal and come out of that, that's them. Every victim is different. You shouldn't be making those decisions saying, you should, you need, da 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 da. You can give suggestions and ask, do you need any suggestions? Ask the victim what they need, how they feel about it. Say, are you afraid? Is there anything I can do to make you feel more comfortable as for your safety? Ask them. Don't assume that you know what they need. The victim is not an imbecile and does have a brain. Just like men have a brain and don't think with that. Like I said, that could actually go for females too. There's females that think with their, tuna boat crotch. So the same applies to this as for beliefs that are not true and are actually myths based upon those things. Reporting isn't the all-in-one treatment that will take away what happened to the victim. Absolutely not. And you know what? It really doesn't, because like I stated, the consequences and punishment for the victim in certain cases such as mine is having to deal with the feelings of loss, the grievance of that person that was special to them, and going through the feelings of not having what positively benefited them in that relationship. As for people, I've been assaulted by people that I was not in a relationship with. It wasn't the grievance that was hard, and it was the hardest part, like I stated, was the consequences as for how my parents and sister handled it. Basically, I was punished for it happening to me. My own sister had blamed me and accused me of being a drug addict when it was the rapist who drugged and raped me when I was 15 years old. That was the traumatizing and hard part, not the rape itself. Many people think it's the physical part. And believe me, quite a few people, that's the first thing they said, well, at least you weren't physically harmed. Oh my goodness. It's not even the physical part of harm that hurts. Believe me. You didn't need to report it. Most people assume that the victim already had sexual intercourse with the person who they were dating and ended up raping them. Well, actually, was told by somebody that they had this happen to them before. But I already know that they assumed that I've already had, gone all the way with this person. And I'll be honest right now. No, I didn't. You know what? And not everybody is the same way with morals based upon that stuff. And like I stated, sloppy, hypocritical ageism, adults are the same way. They have these assumptions, just like I discussed in other topics, how people automatically thought, just like with, oh yeah, with me and, Ken, because we were friends for so long, or the way I wrote, or stuff like that, they automatically, assumed that, I don't know, that I liked him, or thought, I have no idea. I don't even remember. But, that's exactly the same in this case, because people automatically assumed that that was already happening before the incident. And they were wrong. But again, goes to prove my sloppy, hypocritical ageism. Right on key. One person told me that this happened to them before, and she and her rapist ended up being the best of friends. Well, that's going to take a lot more digging and understanding that. Also said that back in the old days, this is a normal thing to happen, implying that there is nothing wrong with what the rapist did to me. To the ones that think it's normal and acceptable for someone to force sex on someone who they are dating, well, not everyone is a regular ball or tuna boat crotch sniffing, moralistically developed person. There are those who have personal morals about sex. They value sexual relations in different ways than others. It has meaning and value to them that are very important to them. Yes, that would be me. I don't view sex as though it's just some, physical act, enjoyment. It is very meaningful to me, and it always has been. I mean, honestly, people used to make fun of me for it, even females, I was called a tease, or, my nickname that they called me was Shelley with the whacked out morals. But that goes back to Ken's advice when I talked to him. Let's just say that, see, he's a male. He gave me the best advice when it came to that. He told me that, why do something if it's only going to make you unhappy? Not worth it, just to make somebody else happy? No, I deserve better than that. I deserve to be happy in that relationship too. So I'm not going to do something that's just going to make me unhappy with me doing it just to please them. No, absolutely not. And that's one thing that did apply to my situation, as for Ken's words of wisdom. You deserve better than that. No shit, Sherlock. Like I explained how conditioned normalized victimization syndrome works, the victim doesn't want to feel the consequences of the painful emotions that follow the inexcusable actions or behaviors of the person who they were abused by. In the case of my father, Ken, and Grumpster, it was very hard to admit and accept that their actions and behaviors are not acceptable, and I know that I don't deserve it. But the consequences is that in those relationships, I had to deal with the consequences of dealing with the loss of what was good in those relationships. We all know what grievance is. Most mainly think of the feelings one has after the death of someone that they cared about. Well, grievance can also happen for those who are alive who you had a relationship with. Absolutely true. So I'm going to stop right there. This is quite long. Believe me, there was quite a bit of responses, and believe me, they're still surprising to me, many of them, but that's how sick our world is, and how many changes need to be done and understood by, I'd say, most people in our society. If things actually need to change, just like I stated, how even abuse in other types of situations that people don't realize, or want to believe, I should say, can affect other areas of abuse, as I've proven, is how the abuse within the bullying cult clan, and with my 3 assaholics, and now with the recent situation, they all coincide as to how it works out with that pattern of abuse. Abuse is abuse, and that's it. And depending on that victim, it all depends on how it affects them, depending on that relationship and the expectations as they had for that person that had harmed them. As my ex-friend Brian had stated, that, if it's the people that you cared about the most, looked up to, or had, certain, positive benefits in that relationship. That's where grievance comes into play too, for people that are still alive in your life. It doesn't deal with just people that have passed away. Grievance can happen with any relationship that had positively affected you in ways. Even if it turned out to be bad, you still grieve the loss of what you had. Like I said, there's the want and the need. We want that, but you need that. And that's exactly what that is you're grieving the loss of what you want still there that isn't, but pushing yourself to what you need. That's the grievance part as to what many go through after a relationship with being in an abusive relationship and coming to that. And that is the hardest part of it. Not the abuse itself, but coming to the grievance part of it when they do accept that they deserve better and leave it. So I'll be continuing this in another part. This is going to be long. So I hope to see you next time. I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. See you next time.